episode 259 of the club, and the message today is that you have to fight for every patient. This is a message that I think a lot of us don't realize. When I say a lot of us, maybe a lot of us as doctors do, especially if your private practice is struggling or if you want to do more in your private practice. I think doctors who want to grow their practice, or doctors like myself when they went full-time private and started thinking, hold on a minute, I'm not going to be able to pay the bills this month, they kind of understand it. But I think it's whereas doctors who are in private practice and do a bit of NHS and just dabble don't really get it. But also, more importantly, staff don't get it. If you have members of staff, clinic receptionists, call handlers, secretaries, PAs, nurses, they don't get it. And I think that there is a lot of people who are in the game, whether that be the doctors or your staff, are basically used to the NHS. And it's kind of like an NHS mentality to think, oh, they will call me back, or I'll send them the details, and if they're interested, they'll get back to me. That's very much an NHS mentality. Miss the call, oh well, they'll phone back. And the thing is, the NHS is not a competitive environment. The NHS is oversubscribed. They actually want to do less work. They are not trying to do more work. They are not trying to compete to do more work. In fact, the opposite. They're trying to do less work because they get a certain amount of money every year, and the less that they do, the more efficient it will be. Private practice is the opposite. Private practice is competitive. It's a competitive environment. There's lots of different people, practitioners, places, clinics who are competing for the same patients. The NHS doesn't mind if the person in Leeds goes to Sheffield to have their surgery. In fact, they'd be quite happy if that happened. They don't mind. Or doesn't have surgery at all. They don't mind. In fact, they'd be delighted if the patient doesn't have surgery at all and decides to put up with their painful knee. They're absolutely delighted. One less person off the waiting list. Fantastic. The opposite is true in private practice. Private practice is competitive. Private practice, there are other people offering the service, and you want to get as many of those people to come and choose you as you possibly can. You can't afford to say they'll call back, oh well, yeah, go and see him if you want, it's just the same. This means that you have to demonstrate superiority in some way over your competitors. It might be location. You might have a good location with parking. It might be the service you offer. It might be the way you structure your consultations or your follow-up or your aftercare, or maybe the way you do your procedure, potentially. But there's got to be some way that you are superior, because you want people to choose you and not the next guy. But also, you've got to be aggressively helpful. And what that means is you have got to acknowledge that this is competitive, and you've got to demonstrate to your patients and your potential patients that you want their business. They are valued customers and you want their business. And this is something that I don't think the NHS does particularly well, and we've all been brought up in the NHS and we kind of do things the same way that we do in the NHS. But we've got to try and get the mindset away from that and get the mindset towards it being a business, it being something that you are trying to give value to your customers, and in return they will give you value, i.e. pay you, and that means that you have to phone them back when you miss the call, or when they inquire you have to phone them up, and if they don't answer the phone you have to phone them up again later on the same day, and if they don't answer the phone then you have to phone them the next day. You have to follow up. If they phone up and you end up the phone, you have to say, look, do you want to give you a call back in a week once you've had a chance to have a look at that information? Once you've sent out an email with some stuff, you have to then follow up with a phone call and say, did you get the email? Anything else I can help with? You have to be an aggressively helpful. I think is a really good term. I heard it in a meeting a few years ago, and kind of because aggressively kind of sounds bad, but then helpful sounds good, and so it's not bad. You know, you have to be aggressive because patients are busy, people are busy, not patients are busy, people are busy, everyone's busy, everyone's got other things to do. And if that person wants to have the procedure, if that they're going to benefit from the procedure, you're actually doing them a service by following up with them, phoning them at different times, sending them different bits of pieces of information. You're actually doing them a service. If at any point during the procedure, during the process, they say, "Look, I'm okay. I don't want it anymore. I've had it done already." Fine, then walk away. I mean, I'm not saying to hassle people, but I am saying to follow up, and I am saying to value every inquiry, every lead. You have to fight for every patient, and you're in a good situation at the moment because it's not that competitive. Not many doctors are very competitive, to be honest with you. But if things start to get worse, if people start getting more cheesed off with the NHS and start leaving the NHS and doing more and more private practice, the insurance companies are getting more difficult with patients, so people are going to go more to self-pay. It's going to become more competitive. And you know, the sooner you start, the better. The sooner you start to realize that this is a business, this is competitive. I need to make sure that I maximize every lead. I fight for every patient, realize the value of the patients, be helpful, be helpful. So I'm not saying fight sounds negative, right? Don't be like, come on, have some surgery now, come on. It's like, hey, did you get the email that I sent yesterday? Can I send you some more information? Do you want me to phone you in a week? You know, do you want to have time to think about it, or you're all right with it? You know, it's about, you know, you've got to do it. And obviously, I mean, I hope this is obvious. You've got to do it in a helpful and supportive way. But you've got to do it. And I think most of us are so far the other way. We send the information and just assume we don't want to hassle them, so we just leave them alone and never contact them again. And I think if you do that, then you know, if you come up against more people being this way, the patient's going to go with someone who's this way, who's phoning them up and checking they got the information, as opposed to you who just sent it out once and they never heard from them again, because it looks like you don't care. That's the thing. It looks like you don't care. I know you do care, but it looks like you don't care. If you've just sent out that email after the inquiry and haven't got back to them after that, that looks like you don't care. If you haven't answered the phone or if you haven't returned their call, that looks like you don't care. Show you care, be aggressively helpful, and acknowledge that this is a competitive environment. It's completely different to the NHS, which is not a competitive environment at all. In fact, it's in fact the opposite. So get rid of that NHS mentality in yourself and in your staff. You need to instill this in your staff, that they need to be aggressively helpful and they need to fight for every single patient. That means returning calls, calling people back, and following up, basically. So hope that's been helpful. See you next week.